What's up, guys? It's your man Donovan Sharp, coming to you live from the West Coast, doing a special edition of the Sharp Reality. We're doing the Sharp Reality live tonight, um, and tonight's episode is about the hashtag ESPN layoffs. So today, that ESPN had laid off 100 of their employees, and it had been they've been laying people off for quite a while. No big names, just I guess a production staff person here. There are basically no on-air personalities, at least none that I know of, or at least none that mattered. Well, today ESPN absolutely dropped the hammer. Let me just I'm going to pull this up here because I have this list up here. There are and they let some huge names go here. So it looks like, Dr. Jerry Punch, who was ESPN's longtime. So for 30 years, he did mainly college football and NASCAR. Tom Ferry, he's an excellent writer, made a lot of appearances on a lot of ESPN's Outside the Lines. He made some appearances in 30 for 30. He was always one of my favorites in terms of his content, things of that nature. Let me go down the list here. Golf commentator Dottie Pepper. That wasn't really a big deal. She wasn't really on too much. But here's where we really start to get into the big dogs. We've got legal analyst Roger Cossack. Roger Cossack was huge for ESPN. He's been a very big part of what's been going on there as their legal analyst. I think he's out of DC, but he'd been there for 13 years. And anytime a player got popped for drugs or, of course, rape charge, anytime a professional athlete got himself into legal trouble, major legal trouble, he was always the guy. He and Lester Munson would split duties in terms of explaining to the sports audience, okay, here are the legal ramifications, here's what's happening, here are the legal nuances, et cetera, et cetera. Looks like Jamie Sire got laid off too. I don't care. She's a blonde slut. As a matter of fact, I think she's actually got a foot tattoo, so good riddance to her. This is absolutely going to be sexist. I don't give a shit about the women who've been laid off. Robin Lundberg, who was the host of, I think it was called ESPN First and Last. He did a radio show with Mike Golick Jr., who, of course, is the son of Mike Golick Sr., who is the co-host of Mike and Mike in the Morning. That show's been on, Mike and Mike in the Morning's been on the show for 17 years. Mike Golick Jr. got up with Robin Lundberg, and they did a show called First and Last. College basketball analyst Len Elmore has been gone after 21 years. Jay Crawford was let go. He was laid off. 14 years. He started off doing cold pizza. Then he was the host of First Take, and then he was on SportsCenter. Ethan Sherwood Strauss, longtime NBA reporter, he was let go. NFL analyst Trent Dilfer, definitely a crowd favorite, he was let go. He was there for nearly 10 years. Here was a big one for me because I'm a big baseball fan, and I've watched baseball on ESPN since I'm 11, 12 years old. Jason Stark was laid off. He'd been at ESPN for 17 years. Like, I pretty much grew up with the guy, listening to his commentary, et cetera, et cetera. There are a host of other. Oh, one more here. Danny Cannell. Former Florida State quarterback, was drafted by the New York Giants. Obviously didn't do that well in the NFL, but he was the co-host of Russillo and Cannell. Ryan Russillo used to co-host a radio show with Scott Van Pelt. Scott Van Pelt got his own show, and so it was Russillo for a while. Eventually he got Danny Cannell, and that was brand new. So the point is that ESPN has laid off a lot of on-air talent. Like I said before, everybody knew that ESPN was laying people off, but no one of note. Well, today they fired 100 people, and I'm sure you guys can Google, a running list of the ESPN layoffs, but those are the big ones. First off, I'm not going to sit here and say that I saw this coming. And if I did see it coming, yeah, I'd be the first to, come on and gloat. Hey, I told you guys so. But a couple of years back, I wrote an article on Return of Kings. I wrote it back in the summer of 15, and it's entitled "The Rise of Feminine ESPN." What I did with that particular article is I detailed that ESPN took to eventually becoming a full tilt SJW factory. I detailed the timeline. Of course, it all started with Pardon the Interruption, then of course with First Take. A seminal moment where ESPN sort of took a hard left turn in that regard was the Ray Rice incident. When Ray Rice, if I can pull it up here, when Ray Rice knocked out his fiancee, what he did, he knocked out his fiancee, and all we saw was the first part of the video. And Roger Goodell suspended Rice for 2 games. And of course, people didn't really sit too well with people, but for the most part, we didn't know what was going on. Well, then the video came out a couple of months later. And at that point, Ray Rice was he was suspended indefinitely by the NFL. Ray Rice he'd been blackballed by the NFL since. That seemed to be a watershed moment on the landscape of ESPN. And a saga after everything went down, that caused sort of a paradigm shift of epic proportions. Now, ESPN was already, in particular, they were already headed towards feminism and the gyno, pretty much the gyno world. But the Ray Rice incident, after having seen that and people calling for his head and him essentially getting blackballed by the NFL, now all of a sudden, it almost seems like it was overnight, guys. I mean, like there was a rapid influx of female employees at ESPN, most of which are now they're staunch feminists, and they don't hide their feminist sensibilities. They'll get on there, like Carrie Champion. She's a big one, and I can't even stand watching her. She's condescending. She's a fucking bitch. I just don't like watching her anymore. And I think she used to be the host of First Take, but I think she's on SportsCenter now. Of course, we all know about Sarah Spain. You can tell just by the way she sounds. She's got if ever there was a 1,000-cock voice, Sarah Spain absolutely has it. Then of course there's Kate Fagan, who you can't tell is a man or a woman unless you see her name on the screen. Then there's Jamel Hill. The list goes on and on. What has happened over the past, I would say maybe 2 to 3 years, is ESPN has slowly but surely systematically alienated and demonized their base audience. Every day you turn on ESPN, and this is tough for me, guys, because I've watched ESPN since I was 11, 12 years old. I mean, I grew up with these guys. I grew up with Dan Patrick, Rich Eisen, Stuart Scott. I mean, the late great Stuart Scott. Who else was on that show? Craig Kilborn. A lot of millennials don't know that Craig Kilborn used to be on SportsCenter. But I grew up with this network. ESPN is the reason I love sports, and it's the reason I know as much about sports. But it's clear now that ESPN, not only do they not care about the male audience, they can say that they do, I guess, with razor commercials and car and truck commercials. They don't really pay attention, but now they vilify men. Every time you turn on the television or the radio, you either look at what's going on TV or look at the bottom line. XYZ player got arrested for domestic violence. XYZ player has been accused of rape. I'll give you a perfect example this week, and this is fucked up. Ohio State has a safety. It's probably supposed to be a first rounder. And the draft is tomorrow night, all right? And some girl has accused him of raping her. I'm not going to say his name on the air because I don't want to continue to smear this guy's name. I guess I'll do sort of the opposite of rape shield laws. But everyone's jumping on here. Well, guess what, guys? He's not invited to the NFL draft. Surefire first round. This kid's going to lose millions of dollars because of a rape accusation. Whether or not he raped her, I don't know. I wasn't there. But as we all know, anybody who listens to me or reads my columns, chances are it's probably bullshit. And if listen, if it's not bullshit, if it turns out that he really did rape her, I will come right here on the air and I'll apologize. But if you want to know about false rape accusations, ask Chicago Blackhawks forward Patrick Kane. A woman accused him of rape. We drug his name through the mud. It all turned out to be bullshit. Of course, we all remember the Duke lacrosse case. The list goes on and on. The point is every time you turn on ESPN, men are guilty till proven innocent. So again, not only are they vilifying athletes, they're throwing vaginas at us day after day. I mean, and it's not just the females. You got guys like Dan and guys, again, Dan Le Batard, Bomani Jones. Those guys are as talented as it comes in as far as sports talk radio. Those guys offer a razor sharp, a good perspective. Colin Cowherd, who used to be with ESPN, was let go behind some SJW bullshit a couple of summers ago. I wrote an article about that as well. But these guys, these guys are as talented as it comes, and I love listening to those guys. At Caitlyn fucking Jenner on his radio show yesterday. What the fuck does Caitlyn Jenner have to do with sports? There's also another guy he regularly has on. He goes by the name of John Amici. If you don't know who he is, Google him. He was a marginal NBA player. I think he was drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think he was born in. He's an American, but now he's over in Britain, and now he has this fake fucking British accent. He's a raging faggot, and all he does when he gets on Le Batard is talk shit about how every man with a penis that's straight, we're all just dingleberries, just flapping in the wind because we're ignorant and we're unenlightened. I mean, like the condescension with which he speaks, it's just unbelievable. I can't even listen to that stuff anymore. And then what Le Batard will then do is he'll read stuff on air. Well, here's another guy on Twitter saying, "Oh, stick to sports," and the voice he uses makes us sound like Neanderthals or meatheads or knuckleheads because we're meatheads or knuckleheads because, God forbid, okay, your audience is telling you, "Hey, get this fucking faggot off the air." No, we're the bad guys. We're the ones that need to be enlightened. This is what I'm talking about. Bomani Jones is another one. There was one incident where Jameis Winston, I think, was talking, and Jameis Winston, by the way, Florida State, used to be Florida State quarterback, won the Heisman Trophy, drafted #1 overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Bomani Jones still talks about the fact that people may or may not like Jameis Winston because they think he might be a rapist. Unfucking believable. Everybody knows he did not rape Erica Kinsman. Yet every time Jameis Winston opens his mouth, ESPN is all over it. Every fucking sports pundit with a fucking vagina is on there talking about why Jameis Winston shouldn't have said what he said and was that insensitive, et cetera, et cetera. It's unfucking believable. So everything came down. The firings, the layoffs, et cetera. And of course, the narrative is on Bomani Jones is, okay, and he said on his radio show, and I'm sort of paraphrasing here, he said, "Okay, guys, I know a lot of you guys, I know a lot of you guys out there are hard-right conservatives, and you're going to sit here and say that it's because of our political views that all these layoffs came, and he said, Bomani Jones, I don't know why these layoffs happened, and neither do you. So you can't say for sure." Guess what, Bomani? The fact that was the first thing that came to your mind when this stuff came down and told the audience, that tells us all we need to know. Now, look, guys, I'm no idiot. I'm not going to sit here and say that I know for 100% certain that the only reason for all of the layoffs is because of the feminism that has infested ESPN. Obviously, when it comes to laying off some of your best on-air talent, when it comes to laying off, the sheer volume of employees, I read one article that said ESPN was trying to focus more on, I think, digital media, doing podcasts because they'd lost like 10 million subscribers. I don't know what that was referring to. The point is that there's all sorts of reasons, all these reasons that all these other articles are putting out why ESPN laid off 100 workers today, a lot of which had name recognitions, people we grew up with. They can say all they want, but it would be they have to point out that one of the main reasons for this layoff is because of the feminist culture that has infested that place. ESPN, last summer launched a website called The Undefeated. And quite literally, it's basically ESPN African American. There's ESPN2, ESPN News, ESPNW, which is basically ESPN Pussy, I guess, for those of you who don't speak Manospherese. But then there was the Undefeated, and it was started by Jason Whitlock. This was supposed to be Jason Whitlock's imprint on ESPN. And what that did is that delved into the world of sports from an African American or a minority point of view. So most of the stories on there, yes, they had to do with race. There was a really good article about Charles Barkley, who, by the way, doesn't really toe the line in terms of race. He pisses a lot of black people off on a daily basis with his exploits on TNT's Inside the NBA. Anyway, Jason Whitlock came up with the idea. This was supposed to be his imprint at ESPN. Well, a few months later, Jason Whitlock was let go by ESPN. And the reason for that is because Jason Whitlock is not a social justice warrior, and he made that very clear. He talks about hard subjects like false rape accusations. He's talked about feminism. He's talked about a lot of these NBA players grew up with single mothers, and the fact that their mothers then want them to be son husbands. Like, he talked about that. ESPN doesn't want that kind of narrative in and around them. They want people to talk race. This was racist. Women are better than men, and he shouldn't have done this, and she shouldn't, or he shouldn't have said that, etc., etc. Jason Whitlock was not a company man, so they let him go. He ended up at Fox Sports, where he now makes regular appearances with Colin Cowherd. So let me get to Colin Cowherd. The reason why Colin Cowherd was let go. And he was near the end of his contract. So I'm gonna go ahead and tell all the facts. I wrote an article posted on July 25th of 2015 detailing Colin Cowherd's exit. So Colin Cowherd already had a deal in place with Fox Sports, and he was literally just playing out the string, honoring his contract with ESPN. I think he had like 1 week to go. Well, one Thursday, he started talking about baseball nerds and the fact that baseball nerds overestimate the complexity of the game of baseball. They talk about how the managers have to be smarter than the players. And he was on the air saying, hey, look, it's hit the ball, catch the ball, throw the ball. Then he said, you'll have to pull up the article, but then he says something to the effect of, look, 30% of the players are Latin. A lot of them come from the Dominican Republic. And he says, and the Dominican Republic doesn't have a very good educational system. So what Cowherd was saying was that if people could come over here, largely uneducated from the Dominican Republic, and dominate Major League Baseball, how complex could it be? So, of course, they decided to go ahead and let him go a week early. The reason they did that is because there was this fake outrage. Oh, Colin Cowherd is a racist. Oh, this and that and the other. Jose Bautista made some Twitter post. Excuse me, Mr. Cowherd, please explain what you mean before I rip you a new one. Dan Le Batard said on the air, and I quote, what Colin Cowherd said was racist. Guys, Colin Cowherd didn't say anything racist. All he did was point out that players that come from a third world country get a third world education. He didn't say Dominicans were stupid. He said they were uneducated. There is a difference between stupid and uneducated. He said the education system in a third world country is second rate. That is a fact. He didn't say there was nothing racist about his tone. But because, of course, once again, somebody points out the truth in terms of race or education, people lost their minds. They let him go. They let him go. It was just a week early. But this is the kind of stuff that we're dealing with. And now Colin Cowherd regularly spits red-pill truth over on Fox Sports 1. Some of the other migrations from ESPN to Fox Sports. NFL analyst Ray Lewis jumped from ESPN to Fox Sports. Chris Carter is now with Fox Sports, worked for ESPN for years. Chris Broussard, Chris Carter, NFL analyst, Hall of Famer, played with the Minnesota Vikings, pretty much raised Randy Moss in the NFL. Chris Broussard, NBA beat writer for ESPN. He's now with Fox Sports. So again, the world at large would tell us, well, ESPN's making some changes, they're making some shifts. That may be true, but you know what? Fox Sports doesn't seem to have a problem in the bank account. And the reason they don't have a fucking problem with the bank account is that they're not berating their audience. Here's the thing, man. How long did ESPN think that they were going to get away with putting women on TV who do nothing but berate men? How long did they think they were going to get away with spitting feminist narrative and sort of weaving it in with sports to keep us around? It just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, the executive in the room could not, there had to have been someone there who said, maybe in a secret meeting, I don't know, hey, if we take this route, we're going to alienate our base audience. Well, who's our base audience? Men from the ages of 16 up. Guys, men are sick and fucking tired of turning on the TV and turning on the radio and hearing them talk shit about men. They turn on the TV, they turn on the radio. We're hearing faggots on the radio telling us that we're ignorant. And then they want to make fun of the stick to sports crowd. Oh, we'll stick to sports. Well, no, we're not going to stick to. No, man. You guys didn't stick to sports, and now you guys are 100. You guys are 100 people lighter in terms of your talent. ESPN also pushes narratives like the listen and believe, and you guys can Google that if you want to. But listen and believe, quite literally, tells people when a girl accuses someone of rape or sexual assault, you should listen and believe her no matter what. This has been on ESPN. Then, of course, they ran a campaign called No More. And you guys can YouTube that. NFL star after NFL star. What they would do is they would say the excuse. No more. She was drunk. No excuse. You were drunk. No. I mean, it's just unbelievable. Then, of course, they had this ridiculous lean in campaign where professional athletes were supposed to encourage husbands to lean in and figure out how they were going to be better husbands. Knowing full well that all of these NBA players that endorsed this were, and you know what? It was Sheryl Sandberg who made her rounds at ESPN, and that was the launch of the Lean In campaign. Sheryl Sandberg was all over ESPN radio. She was all over TV talking about Lean In, and everybody bought into it hook, line, and sinker. To wrap this thing up, what's really going on is, how can I put this? I'll give you one scenario, and I really wanted to bring this to you guys' attention. So John Lynch, I think he's a Hall of Famer, but if he's not, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Played free safety for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for years, ended his career in Denver. He got a job. He'd been in the broadcast booth for a while. He got a job. He got hired as the general manager for the San Francisco 49ers. Got a 6-year deal. Everybody, rightfully so, they said, well, wait a minute. Okay, this could be a good hire, but John Lynch has no experience. He was a player. He was in the booth for a couple of years, and now he's going to run a franchise. He needs to be vetted. What qualifications does he have? Who does he know, et cetera, et cetera. Absolutely right. We should all scrutinize every hire. This is what sports and the media is about. Well, here's the thing. So the Los Angeles Lakers recently hired Magic Johnson as president of basketball operations, which is pretty much the general manager. Mitch Kupchak, who was the GM for, good God, for decades, brought him all kinds of titles. He's out because, of course, Jeannie Buss is now the owner. Dr. Jerry Buss was the owner. He died. Now Jeannie Buss, the woman, is running the franchise. And listen, the Los Angeles Lakers, since it was taken over by Jeannie Buss, who used to be fucking Phil Jackson, who's now the GM for the New York Knicks. It's funny. So many people ask themselves, man, why are the Lakers sorry? Because they're being run by a fucking woman. Nobody wants to say it. So Magic Johnson gets this job, and the same people come out. Magic Johnson was a player. He was in the booth. He was an abysmal failure as a coach. I think he went like 3-11, was fired after 14 games. So people ask the same questions. Why did the Lakers make this pick? Is he qualified? How good a job will he do? Once again, the SJW fake outrage started almost immediately. They even started eating their own because Dan Le Batard, who's usually on the right side of these things, he was the first one to call him into question. And so the guy he discovered and made rich, Bomani fucking Jones, is calling Dan Le Batard and telling him he's wrong. Basically biting the hand that feeds him. So you've got John Lynch and Magic Johnson, both of which who had exactly the same amount of experience doing the job that they were hired for, which is zero. We questioned John Lynch. Everybody's okay with it. We question Magic Johnson, and people are crying racism. This there is going to be more to come. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm clairvoyant. I'm not making any prognostications. I'm not a businessman. I don't know about TV and media or anything like that. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination. But I can tell you this: when you alienate your base audience, when you degrade them, when you berate them, when you continue to put on programming, the bottom line, women who do nothing but stare down their noses and point at us and tell us that we're nothing, and we should lean in and listen and believe, and if we have sex with a girl, it's always... Listen, man, men can only take so much, and at some point, the chickens are going to come home to roost. Listen, man, this is just a matter of mathematics. Bill O'Reilly's he's probably a good example in terms of the math, but Bill O'Reilly was let go by Fox News because he became a liability. Bill O'Reilly was a star at Fox News. He literally built that place from the ground up. Fox News is everything it is today because of Bill O'Reilly. Well, guess what? The sexual harassment complaints, they kept mounting. They had to settle out of court, I think, for like $13 million. They sat down and did the math. Well, look, we're paying Bill XYZ, and we just settled $13 million. Bill is obviously not going to stop hitting on chicks. We got to let him go. Now, of course, there's going to be a sizable payout in pension. But the point is that Fox News, irregardless of their allegiances to Bill O'Reilly, they sat down and did the math and said, hey, look, we can't have this guy around anymore because he has become a liability and no longer an asset. So they let him go. And you would think that at some point, the powers that be at ESPN, which of course is owned by Disney, would sit down and say, hey, whose ridiculous idea was it to start alienating the people that pay our fucking bills? Who are the people that are telling us to push all of these feminist and social justice warrior concepts? Who's the idiot that's putting all this pink gear on players for Breast Cancer Awareness Month in October, but nothing for prostate cancer awareness in September? At some point, somebody has got to wise up and put this to a stop. And who knows? I mean, maybe this layoff spree. Apparently, there's supposed to be layoffs to come. People have said that they're going to continue to do layoffs for a decade. I can't imagine that ESPN is going anywhere. ESPN, look, man, they're still the biggest fish in the pond. They started in 1979. They're going to be around long after I die. But they are quickly becoming an afterthought in terms of people. When people think sports, people think ESPN. ESPN has branded that name. Well, guess what? There's another player in the game, and it's Fox Sports 1, and they're not doing that social justice warrior shit. They're not pushing vaginas. They're not pushing pussies in our faces anymore. They're not doing that, and this is probably why they're one of the fastest growing sports mediums in the country, in the world right now. It looks like ESPN, I'm getting some comments here. Looks like middle initial G says ESPN lost 1 million subscribers in October alone. $7 per prescriber. So that's $7 million a year. That's $84 million. That's $7 million a month. That's $84 million a year. Freelance Ronin says ESPN these days focuses more on drama, behind the curtain, and players' political views than they do the actual sports. I could not agree more. They talk so much. It's become like and it's funny, they give credence to like TMZ reports. I'm like, wait a minute, when the fuck did this become entertainment fucking tonight? I remember when Kevin Durant went back to Oklahoma City to play the Oklahoma City Thunder. And the Golden State Warriors, who Kevin Durant plays for now, just blew him out of the water. But ESPN had wall-to-wall, dude. They had wall-to-wall coverage on how are they going to be? How is Kevin Durant going to be received? And what's Kevin Durant's mom saying? And did you see that sideline, the sideline conversation between Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook? It was like it was like fucking 7th grade math all over again. It was unbelievable. And this is what they do with everything. ESPN's focus is on feminism, social justice warrioring, and everything that happens off the field. They sprinkle in the other stuff to kind of keep you interested because at the end of the day, that's why we watch. And I'm not going to sit here and say that I didn't enjoy that I don't enjoy some of the content. That the ESPN 30 for 30 series is spectacular. Outside the Lines is a great show. I've watched Pardon the Interruption since before I was married. Like, that's how long that show's been around. I've loved Max Kellerman, loved Stephen A. Smith. We jokingly call him Screaming A. Smith. I'm not going to sit here and say that I don't like some of the side trimmings that come with watching ESPN. But they switch to the drama. Like, what did he say? And what did he say about it's ridiculous. Chima Okeki asks, is Fox really kicking their ass like that? Yeah, they are. My radio, I used to listen. I don't even listen to Mike and Mike in the Morning anymore. They're too fucking vanilla. I don't listen. Well, I mean, I used to listen to Russillo and Cannell. Now it's just Russillo because Danny Cannell got laid off. But I didn't really listen to them. Ryan Russillo is actually a little bit more red pill, but yeah, that show wasn't really. It didn't really do it for me. It was too vanilla for me. So I listened to Colin Cowherd. And then after Cowherd, I'll listen to Bomani Jones. Every once in a while, I'll tune into Dan Le Batard. And I love Le Batard. I love Bomani Jones. But I can't, every time they start talking about this social justice warrior shit, I gotta go. Bomani Jones, when he starts talking about the name of the Cleveland Indians, he'll talk for 15 minutes on it. Bomani, nobody gives a fuck about the Cleveland Indians logo. Nobody gives a shit about how offensive it is. They spend so much time on this shit. I wrote an article, I think it was my 4th article on Return of Kings, called How White Knighting is Killing the NFL. And one of the stories I highlighted was the Washington Redskins team name. Every year, right around the same time, right before training camp, you get a small group of 1%ers who are marching outside. This name offends us. This name offends us. This name offends us. Well, Chris Cooley, who used to work for ESPN and used to play for the Washington Redskins, went down and visited the tribes, and the tribes told him, we don't give a shit about the name. We care about the education and health care of our people. Let's see here. Looks like Goku 92 Sun says, I think the big cable media was behind the ad pulling on YouTube. The old media knows they are going the way of the dinosaur. Yeah, I would agree with that. Part of the reason for ESPN's layoffs today is because they are going to focus more on online content, podcasts, and things of that nature. Yes, I mean, listen, this is the way of the world evolves. But there are no layoffs going on at Fox Sports 1, guys. Like, listen, don't let the media fool you. Yes, that is part of the reason, but we in the know that the main reason ESPN laid off 100 employees today is because they are alienating their base. They are vilifying their base. If you are a man, if you are a man and you like women, we don't like you. Fuck you. You are bad. Listen and believe. Every girl that says she was raped on campus did it, and that's just all there is to it. Anytime anybody comes with an opposing view, they automatically label them misogynist. So if college player X allegedly rapes college student Y or hits college student Y, anybody who says, well, was there a police report filed? Misogynist, blah, 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 blah. Listen and believe. Dudes ain't trying to hear that anymore, man. Like, people are tired of it. And this is probably the first of many, many, many steps to come. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Sharp Reality Live. You guys can hit me anytime on Twitter at Donovan_Sharp. You can listen to my daily podcast here on YouTube. You can also find me on SoundCloud. Just do a quick search for The Sharp Reality. Do a search for YouTube on The Sharp Reality as well. You don't have to search Donovan Sharp anymore. And of course, go to thesharpreality.com anytime to listen to all podcast episodes. Thanks for listening, guys. Talk to you next time.